Hello and welcome to the Silent Personalities. Imagine waking up to a world where your country no longer exists. Your cities are burning, your people are being slaughtered, your churches are collapsing into fire from the East. Mongol Empire is coming, the most terrifying war machine the world had ever seen, an army so unstoppable that entire civilizations vanished the moment they appeared on the horizon. While Russia was already drowning in blood, another enemy arrived from the west, crusaders, Swedish invaders, believing the same thing. Russia was weak, broken, ready to die, and honestly they were right, because in the 13th century Russia stood closer to total destruction than at any other moment in its history. One more defeat, more invasion, and Russia could have disappeared forever. But then out of the chaos man rose a prince, a warrior, a strategist who would face enemies on both sides while the entire world around him collapsed. A man forced to make impossible decisions, fight when necessary, when survival demanded. I can carry the future of an entire civilization on his shoulders. His name was Alexander Nevsky, and this is the story of the man who saved Russia from total destruction. In the 13th century, Russia was not a mighty empire, it was broken, burning, giant. Cities had been erased from existence, villages were reduced to ashes, church bells no longer rang across the land because there was no one left alive to hear them. From the east, Mongols arrived like a storm sent from hell itself. They slaughtered armies, destroyed kingdoms, and left mountains of corpses behind them. While Russia was collapsing from the east, another nightmare was coming from the west. Armored crusaders, German, Swedish invaders, men who believed Russia was weak enough to conquer forever. And honestly, they were right. Russia was exhausted, starving, plentum, surrounded. At that moment in history, one wrong decision could have erased Russia from the map forever. But then a young prince stepped forward, a man who would become one of the most legendary figures in Russian history, a warrior so feared that centuries later his name would still echo across battlefields. His name was Alexander Nevsky. Born around the year 1120, Alexander entered a world already drowning in chaos. The once powerful lands of Kiev and Rus had shattered into divided principalities as princes fought each other. Constant cities competed for power, no unity, no stability, no strong central kingdom. And then came the Mongols, led by the descendants of Genghis Khan. The Mongol armies swept across Russian lands with terrifying speed. They burned, razed, and destroyed Vladimir and entire populations into dust. Some chronicles described rivers running red with blood, others claimed the screams of dying civilians could be heard from molest. Mongols were unlike anything Europe had ever sent. Fast, merciless, intense. Russia stood directly in their path. Most men would have fled, most leaders would have surrendered, but Alexander Nevsky understood something important very early in life. Russia could not survive another full-scale war, not now, not while the Mongols were crushing everything in the east. But the enemies in the west did not care. Swedish kingdom saw weakness, Teutonic Knights saw opportunity, and the Catholic crusading orders believed they could dominate Russian lands. While they were vulnerable, only around 20 years old, Alexander was suddenly forced to defend what remained of his homeland. Then came the first invasion in 1240. Swedish forces entered the Neva River region. Their goal was not simply conquest, they wanted control of trade, retest political domination, religious expansion, and if Novgorod fell, Russia's access to the Baltic world would collapse. The situation was desperate. Alexander's army was smaller, less equipped, less experienced at it. He understood something. His enemies did not speed winds wars. Before the Swedish forces could fully prepare, Alexander launched a surprise attack. Battle exploded across the banks of the Neva River. Steel crashed against steel, arrows darkened the sky, men drowned in freezing water, and somehow against impossible odds Alexander destroyed the invading armies. Swedish survivors fled in panic. After that victory, received a new name, Nevsky, man of the Neva. This was only the beginning, because an even greater threat was approaching. Teutonic Knights, of the most feared military orders in medieval Europe. But these were not ordinary soldiers. They were heavily armored crusaders, light warriors trained for religious conquest, and they believed Russia was weak enough to be swallowed forever. While Russia was still recovering from Mongol devastation, the Teutonic Order invaded Russian territory. City after city fell under pressure. Pskov was captured. For spread everywhere. People believed the end had finally come. Even worse, Russia was divided. Internally, many leaders argued with each other instead of preparing for war. But Alexander knew something terrifying. If the Western Crusaders conquered Novgorod, Russian culture itself might disappear. Orthodox Christianity could collapse. Foreign rulers could dominate the region permanently. Russia would not simply lose land, it would lose its identity. So Alexander made his decision: fight now or lose everything forever. Then came one of the most legendary battles in medieval history, the battle on the ice April 1240 to Lake Pipusfrisen Solid. Beneath the cold sky, Alexander gathered his forces. Across the icy landscape Epicentarians, who knew this battle could decide the future of their civilization, and the Teutonic knights attacking massive armored cavalry thundered forward across the frozen lake. Tire iron armor gleamed. Under the gray sky, the ground shook beneath them. So many Russians that looked like death itself was charging toward them, but Alexander had planned carefully. He understood the battlefield better than anyone, allowed the knights to push forward deeper, farther onto the unstable Isethan. Suddenly Russian forces attacked from the side. Shouts erupted. Instantly horses, slipping knights, crashed into each other. Heavy armor became a death sentence. Frozen lake transformed into a nightmareman. Scream of ice cracked beneath enormous weights, and warriors drowned beneath freezing water while still trapped inside steel armor, and the mighty Teutonic assault collapsed complete. Alike the invaders were annihilated. That battle changed history, because if Alexander had lost, Western crusading powers might have absorbed large parts of Russia permanently. Historians later viewed his victory as a turning point that protected Russian identity and prevented foreign domination. But here is what makes Alexander Nevsky truly fascinating. His greatest weapon was not only where it was survival, because while he defeated Western invaders, made a completely different decision regarding the Mongols. Instead of fighting them directly and negotiating, many people hated this saw it as weakness. Others believed he submitted too easily, but Alexander understood reality better than anyone around him. The Mongol Empire was too powerful to defeat. Had entire civilizations had already fallen before the Mif. Russia tried total resistance, with remaining Russian cities could be wiped out for reverse. So Alexander chose diplomacy over suicide. Cooperated when necessary, avoid provoking total destruction, and slowly protected Russian lands from complete annihilation. It was not glorious, it was not heroic in the traditional sense, but it worked while other kingdoms vanished under Mongol pressure. Russia survived broken Olivian summiting. Survival is the greatest victory of Alexander. Spent the rest of his life balancing impossible pressures, Western invasion, citadel political struggles, Mongol demons, religious conflicts, civil unrest. Every decision carried enormous risk. Only mistake could destroy everything he had protected, but somehow kept Russia standing during one of the darkest periods in its history. He died in 1263. People mourned not only a prince but a protector, a defender, a symbol of survival itself. Over time, Alexander Nevsky became far more than a historical figure. It became a legend. The Russian Orthodox Church later declared him a saint. Russian rulers honored him, writers glorified him, generals studied him. Centuries later, during World War I, even Joseph Stalin revived Alexander Nevsky's image to inspire resistance against Nazi Germany, because the story still resonated. A broken nation for an invaders, total destruction approaching, and one man refusing to let his homeland disappear. That is why Alexander Nevsky still matters today, not because he was perfect, not because every decision he made was noble, but because he understood something most leaders never do. Sometimes survival requires courage. Sometimes survival requires sacrifice, and sometimes massiving your people means making impossible choices no one else is willing to make. When Russia stood on the edge of extinction, when enemies closed in from every direction, when cities burned and hope nearly vanished, and man held the line, man refused to surrender the future, and because of that Russia survived. The world remembers conquers, but history never forgets the men who prevent civilizations from dying. In Russia, that man was Alexander Nevsky, warrior, a protector, a man who stood between his people and total destruction. Because Semitic history is not saved by the strongest empire, but by one man willing to fight for its survival. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more epic history documentaries, dark historical stories, and legendary warriors that changed the world forever. And remember, history never forgets the men who refuse to let civilizations die.